Active Pharmaceutical Ingredient Manufacturing in China. An active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API, is a biologically active chemical component that has a therapeutic effect on the body. They are synthesized chemically or extracted from natural sources like plants and animals. After an API is produced, it can be formulated into a finished dosed product such as tablets, capsules, injections, and creams by combining it with inactive ingredients such as binders, fillers, and lubricants. China is the largest supplier of APIs to the pharmaceutical industry due to the availability of low-cost labor. China manufactures over 2,000 API molecules in over 1,000 manufacturing facilities to approximately 189 countries. The government of China provides incentives to the pharmaceutical industry to attract investment. In addition to cheap labor and government incentives, material costs are low in China, which decreases overall production costs and increases the profit margin. Challenges facing the Chinese API industry are poor quality control standards and lower quality materials. The government has been implementing stricter regulations and establishing a system for inspection and supervision to address concerns regarding quality control. Chinese manufacturers are encouraged to adopt international standards for quality control and manufacturing excellence. An API is made from several chemical compounds. The API is not made by only one reaction from the raw materials, but rather it becomes an API via several chemical compounds. The chemical compound which is in the process of becoming an API from a raw material is called an intermediate. Pharmaceutical intermediates are produced as byproducts during the production of APIs. Drug intermediates are the drugs used as raw materials for the production of bulk drugs, or they can refer to material produced during the synthesis of an API that must undergo further molecular change or processing. Key starting materials, or KSMs, are essential raw materials used in the manufacture of intermediates and active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. These would include acids, alcohols, halogens, and heterocyclic compounds. KSMs are used to synthesize both APIs and intermediates. The quality of API is dependent on the quality of inputs like KSMs and intermediates. Intermediates include key intermediates and side chain intermediates. Key intermediates are the building blocks of the final API and are usually produced through multi-step reactions and then purified and isolated. Side chain intermediates are produced during the synthesis of key intermediates. They are often used to modify the structure of the final API or for the synthesis of other compounds. Generic drugs are widely used in the United States and compete primarily based on price. Generic drugs are cheaper than branded treatment and are an effective way to reduce healthcare expenditures. 90% of prescribed drugs in the United States are generic versus 50% in 2005. There is growing demand for low-cost drugs, which pushes production towards Asia. Generic drugs can be produced for 20% less in China than in India, primarily due to cheaper raw materials. Raw materials can be 2/3 of the cost of producing generic medication. Labor costs are lower in China, giving it an advantage for producing off-patent APIs. India produces around 20% of the world's APIs. However, it suffers from a competitive disadvantage to China due to higher labor costs and higher material costs. The India API industry imports roughly 70% of the materials from China. The government of India is trying to increase domestic production of APIs and raw materials. Some efforts have included setting up bulk drug parks, financial incentive packages, tax benefits, and custom duties on imports. The forward outlook for the Chinese API industry is strong, despite the attempts of Western governments to onshore much of the industry China has dominated for years. The growth of China's API industry will be fueled by the growing demand for generic medications, an aging population in most of the developed world, and the prevalence of chronic diseases. China looks to continue to leverage its established manufacturing infrastructure, skilled labor pool, and low production costs to increase its competitive advantage. Despite quality control issues, it seems that the government is succeeding in addressing these challenges, but isolated incidents will likely still occur. There will be an opportunity for China to produce biologics and biosimilars, which are more complex than APIs. China has made enormous investments in biotech research and development for a range of diseases, including cancer and autoimmune disorders. Biologics and biosimilar production in China will boost domestic API production and vice versa.